It's game time for recruiting right now, Mike. This is still your time of the year. We have plenty to talk about, so let's get right to it. I want to ask you about a young man by the name of Micah Bell, his interest in Notre Dame, and maybe offer a little information about who Micah Bell is.
Interest seems high, Darin, and according to the On3 recruiting prediction machine, Notre Dame's got a 95% chance to land him, which is, obviously pretty bold and high percentage for the world of recruiting and how things can change so quickly. But just goes to show that Notre Dame's in a really good position for him. To our knowledge, he's got one official visit set up in the month of June, and it's to Notre Dame. So that's also usually a pretty good sign. Um, as far as the rankings go, he's anywhere from a 3-star to a top 100 player. So these sites have different opinions on this young man. But Notre Dame, very high on him. After Justin Rhett decommitted from the Fighting Irish, Bell got his offer from the Irish, and Notre Dame's really prioritized him in this 2023 class. So he'll officially visit Notre Dame the weekend of June 17th through the 19th, and if all goes well, Notre Dame will be getting a pretty darn good cornerback prospect.
Mike, it seems like Notre Dame is involved in a lot of high-end cornerbacks at this time, ever since the decommitment you just talked about. I mean, it feels like the Irish are involved in several right now.
Bell, definitely a big one. Christian Gray is the one that, I've been on your show talking about him for, about a year or so. He got his offer from the Irish last June at Irish Invasion Camp. So, off the top of my head, those are like the two biggest ones that I could think of. There's certainly some others, but as of right now, you got Micah Bell and you got Christian Gray. Micah Tease is another 4-star corner. Look, after Rhett's decommitment, you're left with 0 quarterback commits in this class, and you needed, if you're Notre Dame, 2 to 3 really talented guys at the position. So Bell, I feel like Notre Dame's going to land. LSU hired Robert Steeples as their cornerbacks coach a few months ago, and Steeples was previously Christian Gray's high school head coach at DeSmet in St. Louis. So there's a really interesting connection there. Steeples actually interviewed for the Notre Dame cornerbacks coaching position that Mike Mickens ended up getting. So again, more kind of wrinkles to this recruitment that's interesting. But all in all, it's really important for Notre Dame to land Micah Bell and Christian Gray at the cornerback spot.
For our WSBT radio listening audience, this interview also is available online on the Blue and Gold channel on YouTube. So I'm referencing something you showed during our conversation. When you had Micah Bell's profile up there, I noticed Ole Miss. That's not something you see very often. Notre Dame and Ole Miss going after the same player. I know it's kind of off topic, but I found that kind of interesting.
I would love for Notre Dame to battle Ole Miss more because Lane Kiffin's a lot of fun. So anytime we get some Lane Kiffin fun, Darin, I'm all for it.
There's a lot of fun guys down there in the SEC to have some fun with. That Kelly guy and Lane Kiffin, although I don't think you want to get on Jimbo Fisher's bad side, but we'll leave that for another day. Hey, I got to ask you about a story you posted recently, and you usually tag me on your stories on Twitter, and my heavens, the notifications went crazy on your Notre Dame, Michigan recruiting story. Now, you asked the question, is Notre Dame pulling away from Michigan on the recruiting front? And we see the two head coaches right off the bat, Jim Harbaugh at Michigan and Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. No surprise, the Michigan fans got involved in the conversation, backing their guy who they now love all of a sudden after they beat Ohio State one time, Mike. Now he's a Michigan guy again. But seriously, you got a lot of response from that particular story. But I find it interesting. There's really good data to back up the headline that was posted. So for people that have not had the chance to read it, don't want you to give away everything, but give us a little small sample of how Notre Dame, Michigan recruiting is going right now.
When I tackled this article, I did not want to bring an emotional viewpoint on this or try to move the goalposts at all. Just going back to 2010, that's just a good clean round number to go to. How do these schools compare since then? In Notre Dame, I want to say it's maybe 55% of those classes is finished higher than Michigan, 55 or 60. You guys will have to go read the article at blueandgold.com, $1 for 1 year premium access, of course. And then you just look at this 2023 class and how many players on the Michigan commit list Notre Dame has offered, and then vice versa. How many of the 13 Notre Dame commits did the Fighting Irish beat out Michigan for? So we looked at 2022. So just look at here recently, and then, the past, 11 years or so. How are these two teams battling it on the recruiting front? And look, I could have written this article about Notre Dame and USC, or Notre Dame and Ohio State, Notre Dame, Clemson, like some of these other contemporaries for Notre Dame on the field and, on the recruiting front. But Michigan, like, even though the Irish aren't playing Michigan for another 10 years or 11 years, I'm very aware that Fighting Irish fans despise Michigan the most. So that's the school I wanted to have this article, be based on, is Notre Dame versus Michigan. And it just seems like Notre Dame is recruiting at a higher caliber right now than Michigan. Can that change? Absolutely. We have, 6.5 months until National Signing Day. But right now, the last time I checked, when I wrote that article, Michigan had 6 commitments, 2 ranked inside the top 400, according to the 2023 On3 consensus. Comparatively, 12 of Notre Dame's 13 commits are ranked in the top 400. So, again, a lot can change. Of course, Michigan's going to sign, 20 more players or whatever it is in this cycle. But, you look at the past couple of years, Notre Dame is going one way. Michigan seems to be going a different direction.
Mike Singer, recruiting insider, Blue and Gold Illustrated, blueandgold.com. Something else you wrote recently, 5 things that kind of caught your attention recruiting-wise, or things that are coming up. You mentioned Notre Dame is set for a monster summer when it comes to recruiting. Can you define just a little bit what a monster summer might look like?
Yeah, I don't know. Monster is just a word I use probably too frequently. Major recruiting summer, whatever it is. So Notre Dame had big recruiting weekends in March, just like the March 17th weekend. And then they had a big weekend for the Blue Gold game. What I had said a lot during those times was those March and April visits set up for May commitments. And we saw, I think, 4 new commitments in May. So now you're going to have these June official visits. You have an offensive lineman, Elijah Page from Phoenix. He's doing this weekend. Big recruiting weekend, June 10th. June 17th, all massive official visit weekends. So you're going to have the fruits of those labor pay off with, whether it's the kids announcing during their visits or right afterwards or 4th of July or sometime in July, August, whatever it is. That's when you're going to see a lot of these kids commit to Notre Dame. So the fruits of the labor will pay off here. So that's when I say monster summer. It's not only these big recruiting weekends, Darin, but it's also the kids who are committing. A lot of them will do it during the summer because they want to commit before the start of their senior season to lock in that spot and focus on their senior campaign. Also, the Notre Dame staff wants to have the bulk of their 2023 recruiting done before the start of their season so they can give as much focus as humanly possible to the football season. So, big summer for Notre Dame. Are they going to sign a top 5 class? The answer to that question will largely depend on how well they close this summer.
I have a follow-up question, but only the die-hard recruiting guys and gals will get this, because this is going deep into something you talked about last year. Maybe one of the keys for a monster summer is going to be changing the barbecue recipe. Maybe Marcus will do that.
Hey, man, I remember that conversation that we had. Yeah, it's all about that seasoning. If you're going to have some barbecue, come on, we need a good rub. We need a good dry rub for some ribs. Yeah.
I want to ask you about Jordan Hall, a linebacker that the Irish are interested in. But before I ask you about him specifically, what a recruiting haul last year at the linebacker position. I know you love that linebacker group, and we got a sense of them during spring football. After you have such a great class, can you talk about the keys for this particular recruiting cycle, what the Irish might be looking for out of their linebacking recruitments?
Yeah, so they already have 2 linebackers committed. You have Preston Zinter, who's pretty athletic guy. I think he could play Mike, Will, or Rover. And then you have Drake Bowen, the in-state player, who really. I mean, he's super athletic as well. He could play. I'd probably see him as a Mike or a Will. And then they're looking at taking one more linebacker in this class. Jaden Osberry seems like the player that the staff has zeroed in on, who they really, really would like to land. I think his high school university lab is literally on LSU's campus. His dad, Verge, I think played at LSU and currently works at LSU too. So that would be quite the recruiting win, Darin. And then you look at a guy like Jordan Hall from Bradenton, Florida. He's from Virginia, but attends school at Bradenton, Florida, IMG Academy. You also have his teammate, Samuel Mpemba, is a big-time linebacker who Notre Dame's after. So Hall's more of a Mike, and Pemba's more of a Rovers, maybe even a Viper. He's just what I would call a defensive athlete. So all of these guys I just mentioned officially visiting Notre Dame in June, whether it's those two commits or Hall and Pemba or Osberry. So Notre Dame should be able to get a pretty darn good third linebacker. And I mean, as long as Marcus Freeman's the coach at Notre Dame, you should expect for the Irish to have some pretty darn good linebacker classes.
You are so locked in on football recruiting. Have you happened to run across the Bowen kid from Northwest Indiana swinging a baseball bat?
I have. Last summer, he was playing in a tournament down here in Atlanta, and I was more rubbing elbows with his pops, but yeah, he's a darn good player, and even his younger brother Dylan Bowen, he darn good looking player too. So yeah, maybe even some more Bowens in the future at Notre Dame.
Yeah, that ball zings off his bat pretty good. That looks like a Division I bat, possibly.
Well, he's going to play for Link Jarrett, so yeah, absolutely.
All right, Mike, a lot going on. I mean, that was just a sample of some of the things that you've talked about at Blue and Gold Illustrated, blueandgold.com, or tweeting out as well. And the greatest offer known to man is still available, as it says on the screen right here, right below me.
Yep, $1 for 1 year premium access at blueandgold.com. So Wednesday starts camp season at Notre Dame. They'll have several camps. There's a few prospects of note on campus Wednesday. You can find the preview of that article Wednesday morning at blueandgold.com. Irish Invasion this weekend, the Lineman's Challenge. You'll have Sunday Night Football, June 12th. More evaluation camps. So while you have all these big official visit weekends, Blue and Gold will be at most of these camps where the Notre Dame staff will be looking at these prospects. We'll get to watch them as well. So all sorts of good footage and analysis we'll have on the site as well. So, I mean, I say this every single time I talk with you, Darin. Now is the perfect time to sign up for blueandgold.com. There's really not a bad time to sign up, and now is definitely a good time.